Good evening, race fans, and welcome to the 200th Elite Racing Belly Up Sports Cup Series race, the Kentucky 200, here on the Elite Racing Network. My name is David Westergreen. Joining me tonight, as always, is our producer, David Huckleberry, and my co-announcer, Zach Evans. And Zach, it's been a long time no see since we've last were at Kentucky Speedway. We were here just last season to close out the final round of the playoffs before the championship race, a race that Justin Wadsworth won in walk-off fashion to jump into the championship race and ultimately claim the 2024 B Elite Cup Series championship. What are your thoughts on this race tonight? As it'll be a night race, there'll be a little bit different of a feel, I think, in the overall race, but overall, I mean, this is a track we were just at. What are your thoughts there tonight?
Well, as you mentioned, it was part of the 2024 B schedule, so that familiarity will definitely play a factor. But I think more importantly, the second race, no matter where it's at, is always almost the first race in a weird way. You open with Daytona 500, the pomp and the circumstance, but also the knowledge in super speedway racing that anybody can win, and it's such a unique style of racing. This is kind of our first true test of the season. Get to see where everybody stacks up on a intermediate speedway as we look at the point standings following the 12th running of the Daytona 500 presented by Rev Limit Workshop. And I think this is where the rubber truly meets the road on the path to crowning a champion.
I think you're right on that. You know, this is where we'll see who really is going to have that, what it takes to get into those playoffs. And obviously with Ethan Stanley being one of our more dominant drivers, already being locked in and kind of in a spot where he can just go and accumulate more playoff points. That's a guy that I think is very comfortable and very nearly won this race last season before Justin Wadsworth ultimately took home the trophy. As we finish qualifying, we'll line up who exactly is going home, as we had 44 entries for the 43 starting spots tonight. I do believe it'll be William White going home, but I'll let race control throw out that information, as the 40 Racewear Pull Award goes to Tyler Fody of Lake Norman Motorsports tonight. 40 Racewear offers the award for the fastest qualifier in each race, and this will be Tyler Fody's first Pull Award, joining Cale Pocock this season. Ethan Stanley, his teammate, will start on the outside of the front row, and that is also last week's winner of the Daytona 500. His number will be displayed in orange all night, with the knowledge that he is locked into the playoffs with that race win. Justin Wadsworth, last year's champion, will start in third for Lake Norman Motorsports. Blake Reynolds starts fourth, the rookie. Zach Rogers will start in fifth, with Chris Wright qualifying sixth. Jeff Green starts seventh, the 2000 Busch Series champion there. Matthew Weeks will start in eighth, with Scott Crump starting ninth, and Ethan Burrell rounding out the top 10. Gavin Hibbs will start in 11th, and Chad Frankenfield will roll off from 12th.
In the 13th position, Jonathan Cutlip. He'll be lined up alongside Brent Jones on the 7th row of the grid. Cale Pocock qualifying 15th. He'll be Trey Holmes to his outside. Michael Hossack qualifying 17th. Ryan Gable will roll off from the 18th position. Rounding out the top 20, David Tooker starts 19th in car 19. Paul Mikolajczyk qualifying in the 20th position. Gavin Higgins, another one of those rookie contenders, qualifying 21st. Tate Lytle will roll off from the 22nd position. Gerald Campbell qualifying 23rd. Ty McIntosh rolls off 24th.
Nick Massey will start in 25th. Jess Story starts in 26th, with Jesse Racimus in 27th, and Dustin Dewar starting in 28th. 29th will be Josh Personette, and 30th will be Johnny Thomas. 31st is Seth Rawls. 32nd, Corey Abbott. 33rd, Carlos Acosta, making his season debut, and 34th is Caleb Pickhumer. 35th will be Leighton Norgard, and 36th, Kyle Hanshaw.
And rounding out the grid, Ray Bracey qualifying 37th, Justin Fortner 38th, Jordan Owens 39th, Ryan Schold in the 40th position, Michael Goodman 41st, Justin Vandermarl 42nd, and Josh Adams rounding out the 43-car grid. As you saw on the screen, we can confirm open competitor William White unable to qualify for the race.
I think he had a little bit of an issue there on his qualifying lap. Ultimately sends the Brit home there this evening. 43 cars lining it up to go for 134 laps here at Kentucky. I do believe we will have 2 stages. Dave, do you have the info card for us? We do. There it is. Stages are going to be at lap... Is that 45 and 90? 89.
89.
45 and 89 there for the stages on our race format. 134 laps, 200 miles. They'll have 5 sets of tires in the pits. And there is the amended stage, the stage lengths. Pace car off of the racetrack, giving the field over to Tyler Fode and Ethan Stanley, the front row. The teammates for Lake Norman Motorsports leading us to the green for race number 2 and the 200th Elite Belly Up Sports Cup Series race. Green flag is out, Tyler Fode on the loud pedal, and we are green for race number 2 of the 2025A season.
Off they go into turn 1. Tyler Fode, Ethan Stanley on that front row, and Blake Reynolds. Strong showing at Daytona, looking to continue that momentum as one of the open competitors who would love nothing more than to pick up a charter early on in this season. Right now, running into 3rd position.
Justin Wadsworth falls to 4th on the start of this race. This Lake Norman teammates side by side to the line. At the line, it was Tyler Fode by 4 1/1000ths of a second over Ethan Stanley to lead lap number 1, acquire a bonus point there. Stanley will continue to hold his own up on the outside lane, and everybody behind back to Chris Wright and Jeff Green, the teammates in 6th and 7th, single file. Issue already for Trey Holmes in the Pro Edge number 23 Toyota. He has already dropped from the race due to a connection issue. 23 car already connected back, but he's going to lose some time as Ethan Stanley clears to the race lead on lap number 2. And he and Fode will go single file into turn number 1. And then it's Blake Reynolds, Justin Wadsworth, Zach Rogers, and then Chris Wright with Matthew Weeks, Scott Crump, Jeff Green, and Chad Frankenfield rounding out the top 10.
Yeah, of course, Trey Holmes will be hoping for some cautions to maybe get those laps back with free passes or the wave around, but according to the trends, we only average 5 cautions per race here in Kentucky, so we'll see if that actually works out for Trey or not.
Yeah, if memory serves, last season we were green for a very large chunk of the middle portion of that race that Justin Wadsworth was able to take home, and ultimately I think these guys are settling out very nicely here in our first non-plate race, where the pack racing style is there, where we're able to put that drama from Daytona behind us a little bit and click off some green flag laps, as there's looking to be a battle for 4th. There's also a battle for 6th just behind, so the top 10 getting a little bit racy as the laps tick away. Chris Wright attacking after the defending champ Justin Wadsworth, and then just behind him, Zach Rogers and Jeff Green are side by side. Jeff clears past Zach Rogers and into 7th. Wright and Wadsworth still undecided as to who is going to contain P4. Up front and ahead of them, Blake Reynolds challenging Tyler Fode for P2.
A little bit of a moment there for Scott Crump on corner exit off the 2. I think he maybe got a little bit loose and darted to the inside there, but he's not going to be able to quite hold on to that spot. As a result, we'll move Jeff Green up to the 6th position.
Jeff up to 6th, Crump back to 7th, into the clutches of Zach Rogers, who makes that charge. Down on the bottom, it looks like you can make a pass on the bottom, but you have to be pretty aggressive with the send and the throttle acceleration on corner exits in order to keep that car from washing up into the car on the outside of you, and also enough power to get your foot down and get that car ahead of that car on the top. It looks like the momentum of the outside lane just a little bit too much right now. It's for the inside lane to really be positive for making passes. That outside lane very useful on defense, and I think that's a trend that we saw from that last Kentucky race. It would have been a couple of months ago at this point, but really only 3 races on our end, in terms of the broadcast booth. It was just very, very recent for us.
Oh, for sure. And it's one of those deals where you can take a lot of race car drivers already have, I don't want to say good memory. They are portrayed as having good memory because they remember very weird things about every race they've ever run. Let's put it like that. Is that fair, David?
Oh yeah, I remember the oddest things about races, and
I guarantee you lots of them remember very specific details about that last race at Kentucky. Do they remember what they had for lunch yesterday?
No.
Probably not. But they can tell you what happened on lap 67 of that race at Kentucky.
These guys using that experience, I think, to put on a good show tonight, but also to inform their driving style for this race tonight. Chris Wright before the race was telling me that he Chris knows he's typically a guy that burns his tires off early in the running, but he was very comfortable and kind of surprised with how he's been able to adapt a little bit better this next gen car. And he saw those guys got up on his outside. He lost a couple of spots. Scott Crump, who we're on board with, went around Chris Wright, but he's working on that long run pace. And I think that experience of having run that race just a couple of months ago is informing Chris Wright's decision making in this race and how he's attacking this track. He knows you can burn the tires off, you'd slow down over the course of a long run, but if I can manage my stuff, I can be there over the course of a run and be there at the end of this race.
And you that managing your stuff. I mean, you talk about taking notes from past races. I remember, and this was almost 3 years ago at this point, but a race in our Grand National Series where I, did my usual qualify about 25th, and then I had a top 10 run at the end of it because the long run kind of played into my hands. There were no cautions in that race. It went 100 laps clean and green, and I did my usual managed the tires and took care of the car, and then after the dust had settled, there I was in 8th, like I actually knew what I was doing. I don't get it twisted, but that's how these Kentucky races have a tendency to play out. And I'm sure there have been lots of conversations in the team chats about keeping that in mind early on, as we're still only 14 laps into this thing. Manage the tires, take care of your stuff, and make sure you have something that's still going to be good 35, 40 laps into what could potentially be a long green flag.
That's absolutely right. It's very tough to do when you're behind the wheel. You see a car in front of you, around you, you just kind of want to go racing. You want to go get him. You want to race hard. One guy that's racing really hard right now is Jeff Green. He has pulled from 7th starting spot up to 4th. Another guy that's really moving forward and is on your graphic on the left side of the pylon is Tate Lytle, who has moved from 22nd starting spot up into the 10th position, just behind Chad Frankenfield. And that group is about a second behind Zach Rogers up here in 8th. So I would wager this group here, Chad, Tate Lytle, Matthew Weeks, they're starting to conserve the tires just a little bit, trying to get in that rhythm. This is just a group of the Pro Edge Toyotas, Jonathan Cutlip, guys that I expect to be very good over the course of a long run. And Tate's up here on the outside lane. Typical wisdom on iRacing is that outside lane doesn't really help your tire saving any, but Tate's willing to make that move. So too is Matthew Weeks, his teammate around Chad Frankenfield. So those guys may feel like that's a little bit closer to go time here.
And you're definitely got to see a couple of different schools of thought in that regard, right? Obviously, you have Ethan Stanley up front, runner-up finisher to the last 2 Belly Up Sports Cup races here in Kentucky, so obviously he knows how to get around the place. He's getting out front. He's hoping to stay out front. Then you have a driver like Ethan Burrell. He was a top 5 finisher last time we were here in that 2024 B race you've mentioned. And he has faded from 10th to 15th to start this race, and I'm sure that's probably a little bit by design. You see he's in a little bit of a skirmish right now, but probably also thinking maybe I don't necessarily want to push as hard as some of these guys in front of me at the moment.
Right, and it seems like passing is at a premium right here. Anytime I've seen a side-by-side battle, we're seeing Wadsworth and Crump side-by-side, and then we're seeing Gavin Hibbs and Chad Frankenfield side-by-side. The outside car, no matter if they are on attack or on defense, has won that battle just about every single time. As Chad trying to move up, he's lost a couple of spots running that bottom lane. He's going to try to move up and beat that outside car. And now's a good time for those guys to put that theory of mine to the test, right? If Chad can hold off John Cutlip right here, that outside lane just seems like it's a little bit dominant right now at the high grip level of the darkened and cool racetrack.
And that's definitely another factor as well. In racing under the lights is not something we do it occasionally here in Elite. I'm going to resist the urge to make a couple of jokes, especially after one of my interview remarks earlier this week in a different Elite Racing Network broadcast. But definitely some cooler track tips than we're used to seeing since we are under the lights. Only 80 degrees to current track temp right now, and I'm sure these guys are loving some of that extra grip they're getting right now, especially if they are trying to fight for a position on the inside lane.
That extra grip is helpful, but it also burns off that right front tire, especially when you're cranking the wheel trying to keep it off of somebody above you. Oh, Ethan Burrell trying to give Jonathan Cutlip a little bump draft going into turn number 1. That was almost a moment that involved Chad Frankenfield. John, Ethan, we left Daytona last week, buddy. Don't go spinning out your buddy here at Kentucky. But Burrell, Frankenfield, and Cutlip kind of just in a stalemate right here. The outside lane, despite Cutlip being, I think, a little bit faster on pace than Chad Frankenfield right now, the outside lane's just very powerful here at Kentucky, right? That I don't want to call it progressive banking. I don't believe that it is, but that lightly sloped banking in the center of these corners allows for you to gather up to a little bit of speed and get that run off of the corner on the outside lane. And for Chad Frankenfield, that's all he needs right now. But as the tires wear, that car will continue to go slower and slower in the center of the corner, and that's where those cars on the bottom of the racetrack are going to be able to pick up pace on it.
And here we'll go on board with Chad Frankenfield into kicking the tires, number 15 out of Little Eagle Racing Stable. And you're going to be able to see as he goes into turn 1 that little patch that David's talking about. See kind of ever so slightly behind the graphic, you can see those movements of the wheel, and admittedly not a whole lot of head movement from that position, that display, but you can see there Cutlip with a little bit of upper hand. I think Chad just had to fight it a little bit more than he wanted to that time through 3 and 4. That's got to give Ethan Burrell a run as well to his inside, as you see that number 37 car pull alongside the A-post.
Yep. Chad's fighting right now, and not to take away from this battle, which has been raging on, but Blake Reynolds has been hounding Ethan Stanley for the race lead. He is just now going to clear car number 91. Oh, not quite. And Stanley is going to have to give it to him. Reynolds to the race lead for the first time tonight, lap 25, headed towards the conclusion of stage 1. These guys will not have to pit before the conclusion of stage 1, which is at lap 45. My assumption, Zach, I didn't get a check or a read on fuel windows as Stanley back to the inside of Blake Reynolds for this race lead. But, oh man, Stanley with a very deep entry to turn 3. He slides around Blake Reynolds, takes that lead back over, but Reynolds back to the inside. Just as I'm about to make a point about pit stops, these guys fighting very hard for the lead and ultimately, potentially, for those stage points.
Yeah, and like you said, track position could be at a premium, especially on this green flag run. And with that in mind, it's already getting pretty close to that. You're still 20 laps away, but those 20 laps are going to click off in a hurry, just like these first 26 laps have. So up front, obviously, they're worried about trying to lead that stage, win that stage, and further back right around this area, they're thinking about how can I get into that top 10, or I guess actually this is around our top 5 here with Scott Crump being in the 5th position. And, that's, there you see Chris Wright. He is the 11th plate driver, and he can see Zach Rogers, Gavin Hibbs just ahead of him and wondering, are one of these guys going to fade back to me? Am I catching up to them? Can I get into that top 10 as we get closer to that lap 45?
And the thing I had noted earlier about Chris, saving tires and stuff, it seems like that has just not come to fruition for the 9 car. He is backslid from the 5th position back here all the way to 11th outside the stage point window. And ultimately the Carnage Media number 9 is going to have to figure out how best to make adjustments in the car and with his inputs in order to get back in there when the green flag run continues on here, and how best to get that right front tire back after you've made it a little bit angry. Something that all of these guys are going to, I think, have to go for. But one guy whose tires are not angry right now is the driver of this 56 car, Tate Lytle. Started 22nd, but has risen quickly through the field up into the 5th position now. He is right behind Jeff Green. He just bypassed Scott Crump. Tate Lytle on the move, looking to join this battle between Stanley, Reynolds, and Fody up here for the top 3.
There you see Tate Lytle making the move inside of Jeff Green. That'll take him up to the 4th position.
Both Jeff and Scott didn't really put up much of a fight to Tate Lytle. They saw him coming in the mirror, went ahead and let that 56 car go on by. They may do the same thing here with Matthew Weeks, who has driven up on them from well back. In fact, Jeff pulls down to the bottom. Matthew Weeks goes up to the high side. Jeff may be moving up on him, but Weeks is ultimately side by side with Scott Crump right here. And Matthew Weeks clears by Scott Crump. He'll pick up that 5th position. He's looking for 4th underneath Jeff Green.
Yeah, but Scott Crump was trying to, if he was got to leave the door open, Scott Crump was got to try and get that spot back. Matthew Weeks thinks better of that now. He is alongside Jeff Green.
Jeff had to move up in the middle of the corner.
Yeah, a little bit of a bobble there for Jeff Green. His slide down the grid is going to continue. I think he's going to be a little frustrated with his management of tires during first green flag run.
Yeah. Crump trying to slide in front of Jeff Green will be unable to do so. Green stays up in the throttle above Scott Crump, and the battle rages on now for 6th between the 2 car and the 90. Up front, a battle for 2nd has ensued as Scott Crump will clear Jeff Green entering turn 1. Tyler Fody has made a charge going after Blake Reynolds, and the front 3 are now under a blanket as Reynolds trying to utilize a charge for the race lead right here. And up front, he does clear by Ethan Stanley right here. Tyler Fody's going to have a really big run on the 3 of these guys. They are nose to tail fighting for the lead.
Yeah, this battle for the lead has definitely picked up, closing in on 10 laps before the stage. Right now, Blake Reynolds has the spot. Ethan Stanley, Tyler Fody, all right there. And we talked about a little bit, won't matter as much here at Kentucky, but definitely still a factor for Blake Reynolds. He's kind of alone up front in that Channel 199 car. His next teammate is Paul Mikulajczyk in 14th, while he's got to do battle with both of these Lake Norman cars.
Once he's gotten that clean air, and it's something that we're going to talk about all season long in this next gen car, is if you can get that clean air, you can really set sail. That the car does not like to be in dirty air running right behind someone else. It seems like despite the draft assistance on the straightaways, the car is just way too tight in the center of the corners. It burns the right front off of the car, and if you're having to run in the tire tracks of another car, it just does not help your handling situation whatsoever, as Tyler Fody trying to find some clean air underneath his teammate Ethan Stanley, and Blake Reynolds' car blinking in and out of existence a little bit in front of Fody and Stanley, providing a little bit of anxiety for the 2 Lake Norman Chevrolets. But Stanley up top is going to hold off Tyler Fody for now. And Reynolds starting to pull away a little bit from these 2.
Looking kind of through the field here a little bit as Blake Reynolds starts to straight, but I say that, and then Ethan Stanley gets around Tyler Fody for that 2nd spot. But looking through the field, you're starting to really see the people who have been able to manage the tires over that run. Tate Lytle, of course, picking up 17 spots to now be in the top 5. And, the surprising thing that I'm looking at after going through and seeing which guys made long runs in practice and presumably would have prepared themselves for a 30, 45 lap green flag run to start the race. First off, there weren't many of them, which you know how I feel about that. But even the guys who did kind of take the longer runs, like Chad Frankenfield had a 26 lap run in practice, and he's fallen to 16th. And it looks like he's in danger of losing a couple more spots here, as you see Jesse Racimus and Ty McIntosh all wanting to get around him. For whatever reason, that long run practice has not translated for the very small handful of drivers who attempted it during the practice session leading into tonight's race.
Yeah, for whatever reason, that it just seems to these guys just do not have a handle on saving the tires of this car, this next gen car. It seems to prove difficult right now, and this battle between Jeff Green and Scott Crump has raged on long enough that it's brought about 10 cars into the mix here. Ethan Burrell, the first of those, but it's Justin Wadsworth, John Cutlip, Zach Rogers, Javin Hibbs, David Tooker, Chris Wright are all back to the back bumper and backed up behind Jeff Green and Scott Crump, who are just battling side by side. That's all they're really doing right here, but it's really clogging up the racetrack for these guys behind, and it's providing for a really good battle coming down to the stage. I think these guys know they've burned their tires a little bit, but they've got to hold on for just a few more laps in order to make sure that they can get those stage points.
And right here in this group, I mean, it almost looks like the start of the race with them 2 by 2 by 2. And, as we get closer to that break, every one of those positions is going to matter for these drivers. I say break. There will not be a caution. That was the wrong term of phrase, but...
Right. They're racing. They will award points at the conclusion of lap 45. We are 3 laps away from that now. Blake Reynolds with a 0.4 of a second lead over Tyler Fody. Ethan Stanley running third there. This battle for the 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th position, all in attempt to conjure up some of those stage points. We'll see if Jeff Green can hold these guys off for a few more laps, as Paul Mikolajczyk making the big run down to the inside. Zach Rogers up top, Gavin Hibbs in the middle. 3 white and red cars working against Scott Crump right here. And Zach Rogers will be the driver that takes advantage. Into 11th goes Rogers, but that is not in the stage points. It is just the top 10 that'll be earning stage points. Be 10 points for first, and then all the way down to 1 point for 10th. David Tooker, the driver currently in position to grab that 10th stage points, just behind our defending champ Justin Wadsworth and Jeff Green right there in 8th.
Gavin Hibbs almost getting a piece of the wall there out of turn 4, but you want to talk about seeing red. That's all David Tooker can see around him right now. He's got Justin Wadsworth in front of him, and then Rogers, Hibbs, and Mikolajczyk all lined up behind him. I think he'd love to be just about anywhere else right now, and in fact he is going to try and get around Justin Wadsworth and pick up another spot, but he's kind of boxed in at the moment because Jeff Green's also trying to do the same thing.
Jeff Green got caught on the bottom by Wadsworth going into turn 1. He'll drop to 10th. He might drop out of the stage points, and he will. 45 is up right here. Lap 44 on the board. They're coming to lap 45. Tyler Fody making a run for the stage win as we look at the battle for 10th. Blake Reynolds down to the bottom of the racetrack in turn 3. He will go ahead and pick up 10 stage points and win stage 1 here at Kentucky. Fody second, Stanley third. Matthew Weeks took over 4th from Tate Lytle. Ethan Burrell will roll across 6th with Cutlip 7th, Justin Wadsworth 8th, David Tooker 9th, and Zach Rogers comes home 10th here in stage number 1. And Chad Frankenfield immediately electing to hit pit road. The tire wear on that 15 car not to Chad's liking, and he's going to try and get off cycle from these race leaders and put some fresh tires on that car.
Jess Story doing so as well, and I wonder, going for the undercut, I guess, Ryan Schultz as well. I mean, if you're dividing the race into thirds, so to speak, this puts you right on the number. So at this point, you're kind of hoping the undercut gets you some track position, and that you're able to hold on to that track position once everybody else puts on fresher tires. We'll see how much longer before other cars start following suit, because none of those were particularly front runners. I think Chad Frankenfield was the highest up, and like we said, he was somewhere in that 15th to 20th range. So we'll see how long it'll be before our drivers up front bail down pit road.
I envision those guys won't be down pit road until 60 to 65 on the lap counter. My assumption they'll try to run it dry, or at least get really close. Maybe even trying to put this into a one-stop race where you can, go to lap 72-ish. I'm not entirely sure how much fuel these guys have, but my best guess is that they will hunt for making this race on as few pit stops as possible, and we'll see what happens. I think 2 pit stops really for Chad Frankenfield, Ryan Schultz, Gerald Campbell, and all those guys who just came down pit road is going to be a tall task. I just don't think that's going to be the race-winning strategy tonight, but we've seen how difficult it is to pass. Passing is very much at a premium tonight, and that is a great way to potentially make up ground on your fellow competitors just staying in line and doing what they do, as Ethan Stanley doing that. Oh, there's a wreck. Paul Mikolajczyk around on the front straightaway. That may change the complexion of this race, as just as we were starting to get that green flag pit cycle, that might be a big break for Ethan Stanley.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how that shakes out for him. Obviously, that's a huge disappointment for the drivers who did pit and lose a lap. We'll take a look here on the Reveless Photography replay machine to see exactly what happened. And I think Mikolajczyk, he had to lift a little bit, Hanshaw with a little bit of a bobble running right up against the fence, and when Mikolajczyk lifted, Jeff Green not expecting that at all on corner exit especially. That sends the 57 car around right in the middle of the racing surface. And that's where iRacing through the yellow flag. Mikolajczyk does avoid any further damage to the car, gets it off the racing surface. But at that point, the yellow flag already displayed.
Yep, pretty clear cut and dry there that, the check for Hanshaw's, who had been in the wall, had Kyle Hanshaw. He was a lap down already. That car very clearly suffering some handling gremlins to this point in the race. So Mikolajczyk checking up, Jeff Green kind of moving up off the bottom of the racetrack, not able to see that car up on the wall, ultimately with the contact and the caution flag, as here comes everybody down pit road. Tate Lytle is staying out, but he had already hit pit road, had Tate Lytle. So too had Ethan Stanley. Now Tate is not, both Tate and Stanley are showing as the lead lap cars on my scoring pylon, though I believe Tate at the very minimum will require a waiver round. As we go down pit road here, watch these guys come off pit road, and then we'll hit an ad break under caution flag number 1 of the 200th all-time Elite Cup Series race.
Since 2010, race fans have had one burning question. When will the Xfinity Series return to Worldwide Technology Raceway? You asked, NASCAR delivered. On Saturday, September 6, 2025, the magic is back. The track that launched the legendary careers of Harvick, Busch, Keselowski, Edwards, and Earnhardt Jr. is now ready to write that next chapter. We're going to introduce you to a new crop of future champions and Hall of Famers. And in the process, we'll create more of the greatest moments in racing history. NASCAR Weekend 2025, the NASCAR Cup Series Championship Playoffs, the Confluence Music Festival, and now 250 miles of the NASCAR Xfinity Series. 2 incredible races, 1 challenging track, a 3-day party of epic proportions. Go to www.raceway.com and lock in your weekend racing and camping packages for as little as $20 down.
Racing isn't easy, but experiencing it is. iRacing puts you in the driver's seat with the industry's leading sim racing game. Drive on laser scan replicas of the greatest racing circuits from around the world. Go head to head against other...
We are back from our commercial breaks. We'll let Dave hit us with an ad read on our potential next caution break. Blake Reynolds off pit road with the race lead. Tyler Fode with the second place. Ethan Burrell is third. Tyler Fode is third. Ethan Burrell is fourth, and John Cutlip rounds out the top five. Tally was issued to Paul Mikulayshik for that one. The incident there on the front straightaway. And we will go back racing here on lap 54 out of 134. The next stage will be lap 89. These guys can make it there on this set of tires and fuel. And the green flag is back out for Blake Reynolds, who gets going in that restart zone and gets a big jump on Ethan Burrell, Matthew Weekson, Tyler Fode.
A big jump indeed for Blake Reynolds, as now the battle will continue on in that second position. Tyler Fode, Matthew Weeks. Oh, Cutlip. That's
big.
Wadsworth in the wall, and now
Hibbs around. Cutlip stopped on the track. That car is broken. Cutlip, Wadsworth, and Hibbs, the three cars involved. Ryan Schold ends up spun around on this back straightaway. Let's go take a replay and see what happened there. I didn't even catch what happened there for John Cutlip.
Hits the apron, I think. I couldn't tell for sure from that, but I think he might have clipped the apron. That gets him out of shape, or at least something did. And he's got a nose up right into Justin Wadsworth.
Oh.
Gavin Hibbs is going to see that, check up, still get a little bit of a tag, but right here he's all right. But then the 6 and the 5 just can't get off each other. The 6 continues down the track, and that's what ultimately hooks Gavin Hibbs and sends him spinning.
Yeah, Hibbs was kind of just an innocent bystander right there. Wadsworth and Cutlip end up tangled.
Yeah, I was gonna say let's stay with Hibbs here, because I see he has a meatball, and it shouldn't have happened in any part we saw there. So I wonder if he got hit after the fact.
Let's see. Able to hold the. I mean, maybe it just broke the right rear when it got hit by the.
I guess it must have. Wow.
That seemed like a bit of a netcode type of wreck there. Seth Rawls is asking for an onboard from the 25, a few cars back here as well. Let's take another look at what happened to Gavin Hibbs as Wadsworth and Cutlip slam into the wall. That's a big hit on defending champ and race winner Wadsworth. And then
I can't believe Wadsworth wouldn't have a meatball, but Hibbs does. That's mind-blowing to me.
Yeah, this next gen car, man. I got some issues with it. That's one of them. How can you get hit in the rear and then the car is just destroyed? Here's an onboard with Seth Rawls checking up for both Wadsworth and Gavin Hibbs, able to sneak through this incident. Rawls will be P13 on the next upcoming restart. Looking to see if we do have a call from race control. I would assume that tally's going to go on driver 5, Jonathan Cutlip. Danley's back on pit road. I assume he's just picking up 4 fresh tires. He might have gotten some damage in that wreck, though. That car is looking a little bit worse for wear.
Well, the good news, if you could be said that there was good news, all those drivers who took the wave around, this gets them kind of caught back up. I don't know. Let's see. It looks like a lot of them even took this opportunity to come down pit road a second time, which you might be all right using a second set of tires early in the race, especially if it does go green.
They ran a quarter of a lap there. I don't know. I don't know if it's worth it. But
you got to remember, they had more than a quarter of a lap on those. I'm talking about the people who pitted.
Oh, true.
Green. So they probably had 10 laps older tires.
Gotcha. Well, I know Chad Frankenfield pitted. There was a stack up. We didn't necessarily have time to jump to a replay of it. Josh Personette spun out. Cale Pocock spun out. Stanley, Tate Lytle, Frankenfield, Fortner, all receiving damage in the stack up that also spun out Ryan Schultz. I think we did see him on the inside as Race Control does note the tally issued to the 5. And we will take a quick look. It looks like contact between two Abbott Motorsports teammates gets Josh Personette and Cale Pocock spun around. There goes Schultz spinning to the inside. I think he collected Paul Mikolajczyk. Stanley and Lytle also picked up damage in that. Just a lot of cars receiving at least a little bit of race damage in that latest incident on the back straightaway. Started with Jonathan Cutlip and Justin Wadsworth. Pace car off. Blake Reynolds and Tyler Fode on the front row once again. They will get into the restart zone. And Reynolds goes very early in the zone. We are back underway. Lap 58 of 134. Fode and Weeks remain side by side entering turn 1 as Blake Reynolds scoots away.
Blake Reynolds scoots away. Tyler Fode, Matthew Weeks battling for that second position. You talk about this being the 200th elite race. We've seen plenty of battles between those two drivers across those races. Of course, Tyler Fode, the winningest driver in the history of the Belly Up Sports Cup Series, looking for win number 22 tonight.
That's a lot of wins right up here in the top 5. I know Blake Reynolds is a rookie to this Elite Cup Series. That's not a rookie driver by any stretch of the imagination. Reynolds very experienced, and he is going to lose the race lead to the winningest driver in the Elite Cup Series. That's Tyler Fode in the 40 car, the pole sitter, taking over the race lead from Blake Reynolds. Matthew Weeks and Ethan Burrell now have the former pro under pressure, but Burrell checks up. Here comes Zach Rogers on the top of the racetrack in the 1 car. Rogers looking for that 4th position around Ethan Burrell.
Yeah, it's got to be said, Blake Reynolds, to say he's the favorite for the Rookie of the Year here in the Cup Series is a mild understatement. It's a little bit like when Juan Pablo Montoya joined the Cup Series and he had to run the rookie stripes even though he was a Formula One winner, right? You know, Blake Reynolds, a former championship contender in the Coca-Cola iRacing series, and with, needless to say, holding his own so far early in this 2025A Belly Up Sports Cup Series season.
I do feel pretty good. You know, we know Blake Reynolds, very good driver, obviously a Cup Series pro, but
hold on. Scott Krupp is going up the hill. Huge hit for a Leighton Norgard in turn 4. That's got to bring out the caution, and there's still good. Yeah.
It's Krupp and Norgard in it. Just as we were going to note I was going to praise a whole bunch of our drivers. It's like Scott gets into Jeff.
Yeah, there's some kind of stack up here. Not really sure what happened. The net result.
Oh, and look at Chris. There. Chris had checked up for Scott and had it woed up and wasn't going to get into him. And then a Leighton tagged Chris, which tagged Scott, and Scott's going to get hit by Johnny and go straight up into the wall and take a Leighton Norgard with him.
And a Leighton Norgard helicoptering off the turn 4 wall as a result of that. Needless to say, you can see both the left front and the right front tire there for a Leighton Norgard. That's got to be a lengthy repair for that 12 machine, assuming it didn't get into the engine as well, and it very well could have with such a head-on impact.
Gigantic hit here, and it's one of those things where super unfortunate that Norgard was just the last car on the scene, and then also happened to be the car on the outside when Trump's car hooked back to the right. My goodness, the stack up there from well in front, I think, of all the cars involved in this incident. It's like it looked like Ty almost checked up for Tooker entering the corner, and it just stacked all the way back, and then Norgard's the one who takes the biggest brunt of the impact. So Ryan Gable gets spun out in this, as well as Michael Goodman in the 44 car. So a lot of carnage here in the middle portion of this race.
While we have this caution, I see we have Gavin Hibbs in the infield care center, David.
Yeah, let's bring him up and give him a brief rundown if we can. Gavin, it's David in the booth if you've got me, buddy. I see you're muted, so let me know if we got you.
Oh, I'm here.
Yeah, I saw you. You barely got tagged in that earlier incident with Cutlip and Wadsworth. Timmy, take me through it and maybe give me some complaints about the next gen car where you can just get tagged a little bit and ultimately maybe end your night.
Really no big complaints on the car besides having to say, watch your tire temp on the right rear, because that ultimately what has been my issue since joining this league. And in terms of what happened off of 2 there on the restart, I saw Cutlip getting loose a little bit. I'm like, I was thinking like, okay, he's gonna save it a bit, and if he comes up, comes back up, just got to be ready for it. And I had her locked down. I mean, I hit him just a little bit, nothing too bad. It was just a little bit of nose damage, but then Wadsworth came down, tagged the right rear, and next thing I know, I'm about to be upside down. But I thought I was fine, and then I tried to get going, and it just wouldn't go, and then the meatball flag popped up. So disappointing.
Yeah, man, I feel it. Any shout outs here before we send you off tonight?
My sponsors, Hibbs Design, Numbers by Joe, Creekers Crafts, and then my team, Strictly Stock Motorsports. Wish we could have started the season a lot better than last season, but ultimately just how it goes.
You and me both, from one unlucky guy to another. I hope our luck gets better, buddy.
I hope so too, bud.
Gavin Hibbs, driver in the 95 Strictly Stock Chevrolet. We'll see you hopefully in better luck next week, buddy.
Oh yeah, we're at a road course, so I feel pretty good.
Gavin Hibbs, driver 95, as the pace car drops off Tyler Fody and Blake Reynolds, heading towards the restart zone to wrap up the third caution of the race. And Fody goes very late in the zone, kind of contrary to what Blake Reynolds was doing earlier, and Fody gets about the same gap. As into turn number 1, the Pro Edge Toyota side by side behind Blake Reynolds, but Reynolds clear of second, able to come off the bottom of the racetrack and run to the wall, allowing him to keep a stranglehold on that second spot.
It'll be interesting to see if we do get a few more green flag laps here, to see if maybe some of those drivers who took tires either on this caution or the one prior will be able to work their way forward if there's enough of an advantage there to start picking up some spots. But right now, these front 5 or 6 cars have gotten single file the first side by side. There you see it, Ty McIntosh battling with David Hooker for the 6th position.
A couple of new faces up here entering into this top group. You've got Ty McIntosh, previously mentioned, up into 6th. Jesse Racimus up here into the top 10, as is the 2 guys behind him battling side by side. That's Seth Rawls. We were on board with him through one of the incidents. He's up here battling Johnny Thomas for a top 10 slot in this race. A couple of guys with some pace that could totally make some moves here into this top group if given a chance. And it seems like, the way this race has played out, track position is so important. Every little bit you can get, right, is vital to how your race performs. You've got to get out of this kind of muck of a pack, and if you can do that, you ultimately will be in contention later on in the event. But it's very much a matter of dodging these wrecks. We've seen guys go from the front of the field like Tate Lytle, like Ethan Stanley, and get damage in the rear of the field and are having to play catch up, and that may continue and snowball for them. So it's one of those things where getting as much track position as you can right now, very crucial to the performance of the race overall.
A couple of those guys I talked about on fresher tires, Gerald Campbell, Chad Frankenfield, taking everyone they approach 3 wide, Gerald on the inside, Chad on the outside. So far it's worked out, but I mean, Chad ripping that high line, and now Gerald Campbell is able to at least clear him and defuse that a little bit, but definitely watching those guys in particular try to work their way forward.
Gerald definitely moving forward with Donald the Eagle on board that 00 Do Good Motorsports Chevrolet. And Gerald trying to pull forward in this pack. He certainly seems to have a little bit of pace with this fresh tires, but also, the way he seems to be driving right now, he just looks very comfortable, making a lot of these moves. We're seeing him 2 and 3 wide, but it doesn't seem like he's out of control. And even just a couple of laps fresher on the tires does seem to be a decent advantage for Gerald Campbell and Chad Frankenfield right now.
There you see, Racimus in the 70 car up the hill a little bit. That's got to back up Michael.
Higgins in the wall. He's going to stave it, keep it straight. The 14-year-old with some excellent car control. He's going to drop down to the apron here and bring the 13 car to pit road, but he was kind of an innocent bystander in that, though he might have hit the apron a lot like Jonathan Cutlip did.
He did not bring it to pit road.
No. The car is definitely damaged. Everybody scattered to avoid him. Everybody missed him. We stay green. Higgins falls all the way back to 35th place in car 13. So definitely not where he was running just before this, as he was up in the top 10 battle.
Heck of a save, though, from Gavin Higgins to keep that from being much, much worse.
Definitely got some damage, but ultimately it will only really hinder Gavin Higgins, which was his own, kind of his own making there, and an incident of his own making. He bounced it off the apron and ultimately doesn't collect anyone else. As we take a look at a couple of guys here in Tate Lytle, Ethan Stanley, who are trying to work their way back forward. And then we also jump up to the race lead, where Blake Reynolds continuing to make Tyler Fode's life miserable, hounding driver 40. And Ethan Burrell just in their tire tracks.
Was that? Yeah, that was Scott Crump. That we saw just briefly flash on the screen. There you see he's just ahead of these leaders.
Crump, I think, will probably pull over here and not get in the way of his teammate battling for that lead. Going to run the bottom, let those guys find a way around up top, but that is ultimately going to slow up Tyler Fode a little bit. It gave Blake Reynolds just a slight run to the inside, and you're seeing I would say maybe that pro factor. Reynolds was able to take advantage of that lap. Ultimately, Fode able to jump on defense, which is one of his strongest attributes as a driver, and he's able to hold off Blake Reynolds here and continue to keep the race lead. That does also open the door for Ethan Burrell, and Burrell goes around Blake Reynolds, and he'll pick up second spot.
And you talked about how much of a factor clean air is when Ethan Burrell was further back in the field, 10th, 15th, couldn't quite go anywhere. Now he's up front, and he is mixing it up with these two guys that we've seen fast all night long.
Burrell, one of those guys, last year he led all 200 laps at Dover. This is I believe he is the all-time lap leader in a single season set last season in Driver 37. He is very quick, very good at leading these races, and if he can grab the race lead away from Tyler Fode, he might be able to hang on to it. There is definitely some pace in this 37 car. Ethan Burrell working really hard right now to grab that track position and ultimately fight for the stage win. It's just 12 laps away from awarding those points, and Reynolds now kind of fighting uphill against two of our series' best.
And the gap that even these three have opened up, I mean, more than 2 seconds at this point between Blake Reynolds and Matthew Weeks in fourth. These guys are absolutely setting sail there. You see the lap times, the gap as it has changed over the past 5 laps, even while Blake Reynolds has been involved in this battle for the lead with Tyler Fode and Ethan Burrell.
Yeah, these three are really pushing hard right now, and Dave mentioned something to us in our little group chat here. I'm wondering if some guys might be able to try and stretch the fuel mileage mark. Our assumption was they're going to have to pit again, but we had several cautions since that last pit stop there on lap 55. I think there's probably a non-zero chance people who pitted during the latest caution flag could make it, and one of those guys might be able to do it is Ethan Stanley, of course, the Daytona 500 winner. He's certainly saving right now, not really pushing forward. He and Tate Lytle both are, two guys that they can win a race just about any way. And Stanley right now trying to, I think, make a bit of a fuel call here and save for that 91 car for the end of this race.
We'll see how that plays out. You mentioned Tate Lytle, Ethan Stanley, a couple of guys who pitted on lap 62. Further ahead of them, looking at the timing and scoring, it looks like 62. Jonathan Cutlip and Josh Adams are probably the front runners out of the people who pitted in that group. But they are several positions up the road at this point, so certainly they aren't saving as much as these drivers.
I'm definitely seeing some guys near the rear of the field off the gas a pretty sizable margin and backing up a little bit. And there's some guys that are pushing really hard. Like we saw Gerald Campbell, right? He is up to 8th in that 00 Chevrolet. He's really pushing hard to try and get as much track position as he can. That's not a driver that is saving fuel in any sort of the imagination. Neither is Jonathan Cutlip, who is right up here behind Jesse Racimus in 11th spot after the crash damage on that 5 car has not taken him out of the race. So, my assumption is that those guys you see kind of near the back, their name's not starting to move forward. They're probably trying to make it all the way on fuel here.
Yeah, that certainly seems to be an option that has opened up with the way this race is played out. We'll definitely have to keep an eye on that as this race continues, because we were on the verge of having some of those strategy conversations at Daytona 1 week ago, and it almost made for a very exciting ending. Not that we didn't get one in the end result, but could be another one of those kinds of nights. Is Gerald Campbell continuing to march his way forward. Right now we're battling with Jonathan Cutlip there. That would put him in 8th if he's able to pick up that spot.
Cutlip is the driver moving forward right now of that group. Cutlip had been 11th a couple of laps ago. Now he is fighting after Campbell for 8th. And Jonathan Cutlip, despite the damage on the right side of that 6 car, he is really able to wrap the bottom of the racetrack nicely. And he's up into the top 10 right now. This 5 car might be a contender if it can get that track position that it had before and get back up to the front.
And right now he's just kind of pinned down on the bottom underneath Gerald Campbell. Just can't quite get the run off the corner he needs, using up almost all of that racetrack that is available to him. But he's got to get a little bit of a break there. Gerald left a little bit more room that time through 3 and 4, whether by design or just missing the corner. And that's got to allow Jonathan Cutlip to clear up in front.
Let's remember, stage points awarded in 3 laps as well. This is a battle for that 8th spot, so Gerald fighting to get some stage points up front. The battle is for the race lead as well. Blake Reynolds all over the back bumper of Tyler Fode, trying to grab stage number 2 after he already won stage 1. Fode trying to hold off the driver of the 66 Toyota. They will be 2 to go in the stage here, this time by Ethan Burrell, a distant third, only a half second back, but just not quite able to keep the same pace as Tyler Fode and Blake Reynolds right now. This battle for the lead has been effectively a 3-car fight from the drop of the green flag. It's just we swapped out which Ethan was amongst Tyler Fode and Blake Reynolds, from Stanley to Burrell this time.
And it's not going to happen in time for the end of this stage, but looking at that scoring pylon, you do see Matthew Weeks starting to close in on these top 3. He's cut that down to less than 2 seconds from the leader. You can see all those green numbers on the lap time comparison between himself and 3rd place Ethan Burrell. Like I say, it's not going to matter in time, for this stage by the end of lap 89 in 2 laps time, a lap and a half at this point. And there you see Blake Reynolds. He's got to take a shot here to the inside of Fode.
Reynolds set it up with an outside run through turn 1, ultimately unable to clear by Tyler Fode. White flag in stage 2 here in the Kentucky 200. Fode running that defensive line into turn 1. Blake Reynolds is going to have to find a way around, and he's going to wrap the bottom, able to grab a little clean air on the left front fender of that 66 car. He's going to have a shot here in turn 3.
Off into turn 3 they go. Reynolds to the bottom. Fody maintaining that middle lane. He's got to be able to use that and stay out in front. The stage winner will be Tyler Fody.
Blake Reynolds second in stage number 2. Ethan Burrell third. Matthew Weeks fourth. David Tooker fifth. Ty McIntosh takes home 6th place stage points with his teammate Seth Rawls taking 7th. Jonathan Cutlip grabbed 8th. Jesse Racimus 9th. He nipped Gerald Campbell at the line for that 10th spot. Just outside the stage points were Chad Frankenfield, Josh Adams, Zach Rogers, Johnny Thomas, and Jordan Owens. That battle for 10th is now pretty ferocious. Gerald, I think, burned the good out of those Goodyear Eagle, pun intended, as that car a little bit loose right now with Gerald, and he's starting to fall back, but he did pick up a stage point.
He picked up the stage point, but at what cost? You know, what is the price he's now going to pay? Definitely fighting the handling of that car, as now he's the middle of 3 wide. Fortunately, they're able to clear around him, but absolutely stuck in the mud right now. Pretty aggressive move to the inside while Jordan Owens was peeking there, but ultimately can't take away that. I mean, he is just getting ambushed right now.
Leave it on this, but Blake Reynolds and Tyler Fody are side by side for the race lead up front. This battle, though, might result in a lot more than just a change for the lead. It feels kind of like a wreck is brewing here in the mid-pack. Justin Vandermarl up the outside lane. Nikolajczyk and Jeff Green side by side just behind this group. A wad of cars fighting it out right here, and I think this whole group is guys who cannot make it to the end on fuel, so they're trying to get all they can get right here before to set themselves up for a future potential caution flag. But you see the gap behind Michael Hosak. That, I think, is the gap back to the cars that are saving fuel.
Yeah, I think you're probably spot on with that. And right now, these cars are all just trying to get around Gerald Campbell, who's just kind of fallen in their lap while they already had a pretty intense battle going on, trying to get that valuable track position. And now Johnny Thomas to the inside of Gerald Campbell. Jeff Green's going to try and get that run off the corner so that he can set up a pass going into turn 1. Starting to settle down a little bit, but Gerald Campbell definitely falling through the pack here.
Yeah, definitely is. Definitely paying the price, I think, for burning the rear tires, is what we heard from Gavin Hibbs in his interview from the Infield Care Center. So it seems like that is the kind of issue that Gerald is facing, that car kicking out in the center of the corner, kicking out on corner exit, just not liking when Gerald starts to put the gas pedal down. And once that happens, I mean, it's like driving on ice in this next-gen car. There's just not a whole lot of downforce in order to help you keep the car from spinning. It's the loose condition in this car is kind of amplified, I would say, and a little unnatural feeling. Also, it just doesn't feel as good as when you have one of those cars you can kind of kick sideways and drive. And I think that's one that Jeff Green would probably tell you is more fun, as he's still trying to fight and get his way around Gerald Campbell. But ultimately, this battle has pretty much quieted down.
Here we look a little further ahead. This is a battle for the 8th position. Seth Rawls into 25, Jesse Racimus.
Caution.
We have a caution. I do not.
Ryan Schuld was on pit road. I don't see anything.
There was definitely, Ryan Gable saw something, but I don't know who he saw. I have a feeling it may have been Cale Pocock based on some of the conversation I'm hearing.
He's in the grass. That's not a good start.
It's not a great start.
Oh, wow.
Yep.
That'll do it. How did Cale Pocock end up in the grass is the real question. Is he going to pit road? This car, I think this car just stepped out on him. And then
I don't know. I'd want to go on board. I'd want to go on board.
take one more look. Is everybody coming down pit road in the lead pack? Obviously, the cars who tried to stay out and save fuel, unable to do so. Here we go. Back to the right, back to the right, back to the right.
Yep.
Yeah.
So that car is loose. Yep. Okay.
Through the grass goes Pocock, ultimately trying to slow it down, but also trying to keep it straight, and then is unable to do so once that transitions back out onto the banking, and it ultimately spins the 60 car and brings out the yellow flag. So, Dave, do we want to do our ad reads here since we do have a chance under this yellow flag?
Sure, I can do that. Up there real quick. We played the ad from Worldwide Technology Raceways, one of our premier sponsors. We also have Blue Egg Marketing. Rev up your business with Blue Egg, your marketing pit crew. Turbocharge your lead generation with experienced drivers that can navigate the competitive track to connecting with your customers. With Blue Egg, you're always in the pole position, leading your brand toward victory lane. Don't spin your wheels. Accelerate success with Blue Egg, fueling small businesses to win big. Our series sponsor, Belly Up Sports. The internet sports bar, sports commentary via podcast, forums, and articles on topics ranging to nearly every sport. Not your usual sports site. Check them out at X or at bellyupsports.com. And those are all our reads for tonight, guys.
Awesome. After pit stops, we have what is a de facto new race leader, I believe, in Jonathan Cutlip. My assumption is that Jonathan Cutlip went from 6th to 1st by taking 2 right side tires. Would that be correct on you guys' end?
I'm sorry, what?
Cutlip went from 6th to 1st. Did he take 2 tires?
I probably won't be able to tell you, but I'll look.
It would seem feasible to me. We'll take a look at the film.
Let's go to the videotape.
See what how long that 5 was in the box. Right side's up.
It was only a 9.53 second pit stop, so
Down
my God,
and go.
That is a 2-tire pit stop.
2 tires for Jonathan Cutlip. That has him in the race lead. I do hope that damage isn't affecting that car and loosening it up any, because Cutlip's about to be driving an awfully loose number 5 EPI fueled up racing Chevrolet. Tyler Fode, Blake Reynolds, Ethan Burrill, and David Hooker, the top 5. Matthew Weeks, Ty McIntosh, Seth Rawls, Jesse Racimus, and Chad Frankenfield make up the top 10 as we come to a restart here at lap 100. 34 laps to go when this restart takes place. Jonathan Cutlip out there on 2 tires trying to grab track position, grab clean air, and make a break for the race win. Pace car is off. Cutlip heading towards the restart zone, and we are green once again. Big jump for Jonathan Cutlip on the bottom of the racetrack, but it's all about how that 5 car is going to handle entering turn 1.
Definitely reshuffling the deck with everybody getting to come down pit road that time. We'll see how those 2 tires hold up for Jonathan Cutlip, but right now he's out front, and Blake Reynolds has a mirror full of David Hooker.
Does Tyler Fode able to hold off that 66 car for now? Jonathan Cutlip's car looks pretty good. That clean air definitely helping the downforce on the 5 car despite the 2 tires. Jonathan Cutlip leads lap 101, and he's at least able to keep it clean and green for a little bit right here. I don't know that this is a bad call yet. It seems like it's working for now. That 5 car in the clean air seems to be pretty quick. Burrell's going to take 3rd over from Reynolds. Here comes Weeks looking for 4th around driver 66. They're both going to get in. Blake Reynolds back to 5th, pretty much the lowest he's been all night.
Which the good news is, even if he does fall to 5th here, he's still got a little bit of a buffer to settle in, and maybe he can cool those tires down a little bit after being kind of pinned on the bottom and reset and form a charge over these final 30 laps.
Certainly not over as Jonathan Cutlip continues to lead with those 2 right side tires. Tyler Fode driving in the tire tracks of the 5 car. Then it's Burrell, Weeks, and Blake Reynolds in that top 5. Then a half second back to David Tooker, Ty Magitosh, and Chad Frankenfield battling it out for 6th. The drivers on the charge on this restart are Tate Lytle and Ethan Stanley. The two of them have really fought their way forward here on this restart. The both of them are really making some bonsai moves. Tate Lytle all the way up to, I believe this is the 14th position. Ethan Stanley up to 15th, and both of them have experienced damage in this race and fallen all the way to the back after that first set of green flag pit stops and that first caution flag, the timing of it. So ultimately, they will move forward. As up front, Tyler Fode has gone around Jonathan Cutlip. That was somewhat inevitable. But Cutlip able to hold off for 3 or 4 laps of those 2 tires. That was a pretty good call. It's just a matter of, can he keep it up for a longer green flag run since there were still 30 laps to go.
Yeah, it'll be interesting over the long term. Does he at least finish in front of where he might have with a 4-tire stop as Ethan Burrell gets a little bit loose off turn 2, and Cutlip got a nice little run there. He's not going to go away just yet.
Tyler Fode's been one of the 2 or 3 fastest cars all night long. Won the pole. That's a spot where he's able to make that move because he's been very quick tonight. Jonathan Cutlip and Ethan Burrell, working hard trying to get after Tyler Fode, but really the only guy who's been able to put any pressure on Fode has been that Blake Reynolds car who's back in 5th. Car breakaway at the front of the field. Tooker not really able to keep pace, the pace that this group of 5 is doing right now. Burrell giving Cutlip a big push into turn 1. That is something that he did earlier, and it sent that 5 car sideways and upset the balance of it. This time it works a little bit better, but I don't know that that's a move that Burrell needs to keep replicating. It doesn't seem like it's really working.
It's tough at this point because I feel like you're fighting a couple of things, right? You're trying to get the clean air on the nose, but at the same time you've got to, it's a pretty line dependent track, so you can't afford to give up so much and open the door for Matthew Weeks behind you. It's a tricky battle he finds himself in, but maybe it might be better off just, I don't know. It's hard to say because even if you do, I'd say ride and save your tire, but if you ride right in the wake of Jonathan Cutlip, that's not going to help you save tire. That's just got to put more pressure on that right front as you're trying to make the car turn with no front air on the nose. It's a tough situation, but it may be a no-win situation, but I'd say right now it's definitely not winning because it's only got to take one bobble, and Matthew Weeks has got to be passing him for that 3rd spot.
Weeks way up to the top of the racetrack this time, and I don't know that that's the move Weeks wanted to go for, and that actually does give Ethan Burrell a little bit of breathing room as Weeks kind of falls back into the clutches of Blake Reynolds, but Reynolds kind of backed off from Matthew Weeks. I don't know that either one of those 2 Toyotas are really terribly thrilled with the situation they're in right now. Your 5th spot, it's just going to be really tough to make 4 passes in these last 25 laps. The only guys making passes right now are Tate Lytle and Ethan Stanley. They are up into the top 10 right now, but they're going to quickly hit a wall where they are the same pace as the cars around them.
And the other thing, too, is, David Tooker is starting to kind of creep back into this picture as well. There's a pretty big gap from 6th on back, but this was a 5-car race at one point, and it's kind of evolving a little bit.
Matthew Weeks to the inside of Ethan Burrell for that 4th spot, or that 3rd spot. That's not going to work, but here comes Blake Reynolds up to the outside of Matthew Weeks trying to grab that 3rd spot away. Cutlip has been able to equalize on the tires. He's attacking Tyler Fode for the race lead as well.
And he almost got he did get a huge run out turn 2. He's got to look to the inside. Is he far enough alongside to force the issue? Yes, he is. They're side by side through 3 and 4. This is the battle for the lead coming to 22 laps to go here in the Kentucky 200.
Tyler Fode able to hold off Jonathan Cutlip, play that trademark defense that Tyler Fode is so known for. Burrell and Weeks side by side behind. Then it's Blake Reynolds and David Tooker. Reynolds way up high, trying to drive it down the hill and get a big run on the back straightaway. He might take a look underneath Ethan Burrell. Weeks had such a good run out of turn 2. He might be alongside Jonathan Cutlip for second.
I mean, we waited for this battle to start brewing. Here it comes. Matthew Weeks to the inside of Jonathan Cutlip. Cutlip's got to be able to power off of turn 4, though. He's got to stay in front for now, but he can't shut the door. They're going to have to stay side by side for at least one more set of corners.
That is exactly what Tyler Fode wants to see. Those two side by side fighting it out there on corner exit. Blake Reynolds clears Ethan Burrell for that 4th spot. He's now looking after Jonathan Cutlip for 3rd. Remember, Cutlip on 2 right side tires. Weeks trying to get there, drifting up the track, almost making contact with the 5 car.
And Matthew Weeks, it might honestly be helping him a little bit with, trying to have that extra rubber as he's holding to the inside, but at the same time it might be helping Cutlip as well to have a little bit freer race car to work that high side and keep Matthew Weeks pinned to the bump. A huge lunge there into turn 3 for Matthew Weeks, but he can't go anywhere. Tyler Fode's right in front of him.
It's this excellent defensive driving by Tyler Fode. He's just shifting from lane to lane, blocking off the air on whichever driver he feels is closer to making a move on him, and it's really hampering both drivers in the center of the corner. Fode's just shutting the door on that clean air, but the driver that has the clean air is able to really rotate through that center of the corner. It's just this wake driving with this next-gen car is what's going on right here, but Fode stays up top. That allows Matthew Weeks with some clean air on the bottom. He is almost clear of Jonathan Cutlip here for second. Not able to get there.
Couldn't quite get there, and now again, that high side, Jonathan Cutlip's able to get such a run off the corner, and Matthew Weeks just can't get clear of him. He's just stuck, pinned to the bottom, and that is allowing Tyler Fode to build a little bit of breathing room. Behind him, David Tooker is up into the top 5, but Blake Reynolds again got to try to find his way forward. He takes a peek inside Matthew Weeks, nothing doing that time.
Yep. All these guys, the six-car battle for the win has opened up the back of the field. Tate Lytle and Ethan Stanley have cleared through to 7th and 8th. The two of them are gaining on this battle, but they would be not. I don't think they'll be factors unless a caution flag flies. Tyler Fode, Jonathan Cutlip, Matthew Weeks, Blake Reynolds now single file here with 17 coming to 16 laps to go.
I'll definitely keep an eye on the lap times for somebody, especially Ethan Burrell, since he not Ethan Burrell, but Tate Lytle, since he will have a little bit more of that clean air to see if he can close the gap. But right now, I think you're right that this top 6 is probably going to be your battle for the win.
Oh, there it is. Oh. Big wreck. Jeff Green, Ty McIntosh.
But they're still wrecking.
Gail Pocock, Ray Bracey, Dusty Dewar. Looks like Jeff's car in the wall once again. Oh, he and Josh Adams were making contact well before the entry of the corner.
Now wait, yeah, the wrecks. So okay, let's see what happened here. Because if they, yeah, there's the contact there. I think Jeff Green maybe just came up a little bit more than the amount of room he was being given at that point. All right, but he's going to save it. But he is going to wash back up the hill. And I'm going to assume we're going to get some stack up here.
Adams is still a little bit out of shape there in front of Jeff Green. That car's now on the apron.
Now he's on the apron. Here we go. And he's going to back up the track because he is out of control at this point. There's the back up the track. Of course, that's going to collect Jeff Green. That's going to collect Ty McIntosh.
Nikolajczyk.
And that's probably about the point the caution came out. Jeff Green's going to get kind of turned off the nose of Ty McIntosh. And people who nailed to the bottom now have a race car in front of them. That's going to collect Goody, Kel Pocock, Ray Bracey.
That is a tough break for everybody involved there. And Pocock's going to make a little bit of contact with Dustin Dewar right there. That'll finish it up. So everybody came down pit road. Tyler Fode won the race off pit road. Jonathan Cutlip, I believe, got 4 tires that time. Nobody else tried it.
What if I told you not everybody came down pit road?
Everybody but Michael Goodman. Goody just wanted a little TV time for the 44 car. That wasn't him getting spun out in that wreck.
How dare someone stay out?
I'm very curious. Did he stay out to lead the lap? Is he got to come down pit road this time?
I think so. Worth noting, just behind Michael Goodman, that Nick Mast.
Come on. It's race 200 for a guy who is 0 for 191. You wouldn't try it?
Well, it doesn't appear that he is interested in trying.
Come on, Goody.
Yeah, he would. The way these guys run,
probably the better part of valor here in his defense. I think if it were race 201, I wouldn't even tempt him with that. But race 200, that would have been a cool story. I don't think it would have worked out, but it would have been a cool story if it did.
I think it's telling that every single car in the field came down pit road and picked up tires. I think Goody would have fallen like a stone in a pond there, just straight down.
100%. Especially since we don't know how much damage he has from being involved. And that could have been part of it, too. It may not have even been, I'm going to try to lead the lap and get on TV. Depending on how far away he was from the pack, he might not have felt confident he could pit without losing a lap, especially not knowing how much damage he might have from that incident.
Yeah. Worth noting there also, Nick Massey ended up with a wave around. He disconnected from the race earlier, ultimately was not able to really compete in that 44 car akin to Trey Holmes. Both of those cars 3 laps down after getting a couple of wave arounds and lucky dogs over the course of the night, but neither has ultimately been a factor in this race due to those connection issues. Up front, it is Tyler Fode and Matthew Weeks, the front row. Then it'll be Jonathan Cutlip and Blake Reynolds, Ethan Burrell, Tate Lytle, and Ethan Stanley, the top 7. Then it's Zach Rogers, David Tooker, and Jordan Owens rounding out the top 10. Lytle and Stanley got their caution, and Jeff Green will get the tally for that latest caution. And we will restart here, coming to 12 laps to go. Pace car on pit road. Tyler Fode leading them towards the restart zone. He's been in control for much of the night. And the green flag is out. Fode goes early in the zone and very much gets a big jump on the group behind.
Big jump with 12 laps to go, and there you see the battle for second behind him. Jonathan Cutlip to the inside, Matthew Weeks on the outside. It's
Weeks
in the wall,
and Weeks collects Zach Rogers. The caution is out for Weeks and Rogers. That's going to be it. Rogers comes down the track and gets Dustin Dewar. I couldn't tell who else he got in that one, but he collected someone else. Maybe a little. That one might not have been necessary, I would say.
We'll have to get a look at the...
It was Hanshaw. Kyle Hanshaw was the other driver who got collected. Ty McIntosh is going to pick up another bit of damage. Was Weeks just loose there?
I think so.
Rogers just lets off the brakes and just hauls down into Dewar, Hanshaw, McIntosh. Yeah, we don't give penalties for not holding the brake during a wreck, but that is the reason you want to do that. So you don't hook it down the track, especially with the toe links on these cars. And I'm certain Rogers's was busted, that it'll change direction on your car really quickly. And if you back the brakes on, it'll prevent you from collecting other cars unnecessarily. Nowhere to go for Dustin Dewar.
Nowhere for Dustin Dewar to go there. And of course, Kyle Hanshaw, as you mentioned, got collected as a result of that. Rogers with a meatball. Looks like maybe no one else got one, surprisingly.
So my question is, and I'm gonna watch it back. Looks like Matthew Weeks just got loose. that 11 car just got squirrely on corner exit there in turn 2, washed up the track, and he hit the wall. And once he bounced off the fence, that's when he came down and collected Zach Rogers. But not a mistake that you typically see from a two-time former champion of this series.
And not something we've seen a whole lot of even on cold tires here tonight. I have to imagine that caught him almost completely by surprise.
It happened a little bit to Jonathan Cutlip, but I do think that was also a bit of a factor of Jonathan Cutlip hitting the apron earlier. But
right, yeah,
that very odd
most
of
of
a
the issues
situation.
we've seen have been the inside car clipping the apron or something to that effect. We haven't seen, other than like when Gerald Campbell just burned off his tires, we haven't seen a lot of cars getting loose on exit like we see at a lot of tracks with this next gen car. That just hasn't been something we've seen tonight. I know it caught me by surprise. Like I say, I'm sure it caught Matthew Weeks off guard as well.
Yeah, for sure. That's like I said, that's a multi-time champion. That's a guy I feel very confident in, when I'm watching these races. And a handling issue from a guy like that's just a surprise. That's not something you expect. It is something that can happen, especially when you're pushing hard for the race win. And Weeks needed to get a really big run there, generate something down the back straightaway to be able to make a move on Tyler Fode and clear by Jonathan Cutlip, and he was unable to do so. And ultimately, that's gonna cost him a chance to win this race. We look through the field here, just outside the top 10. Ryan Gable, Johnny Thomas, Chad Frankenfield, Jesse Racimus in row 7 there. Then it's Gerald Campbell and Chris Wright in row 8. Behind them, it's Michael Hosack and Kachow Corey Abbott in row 9. And Ryan Schull, Justin Fortner rounding out that top 20. Just 9, coming to 8 laps to go for this restart. Tyler Fode has selected the outside lane this time to try and pull Ethan Burrell through, potentially trap Blake Reynolds on the bottom. Fode was getting such a good start on the bottom. I'm not sure I would have changed anything, but we'll see what he wants to do here. I feel like it's Blake Reynolds related, though, is this outside lane choice. He's just trying to put as many cars as he can between what he feels like is his biggest competition. Base car is off. Tyler Fode up on the outside lane. Jonathan Cutlip to the inside. Then it's Blake Reynolds and Ethan Burrell. Ethan Stanley and Tate Lytle, the top 6. Into the restart zone we go, and Fode goes very late in this restart zone this time, but it does result in a big jump for the 40 car.
Oh, a huge jump. Huge jump, and that's going to open the door for Ethan Burrell on the outside, but can he take advantage of it? No, Jonathan Cutlip might be able to clear up. He will. And here comes Reynolds on the inside.
Reynolds gets the clean air to the bottom, goes the 66 car. Fode's going to shut that off, but Reynolds is probably going to clear into second. Stanley working towards third with help from Tyler Fode. He's going against Jonathan Cutlip, and Cutlip able to shut off the run from the 91 car.
Ethan Stanley, huge lunge into turn 1 that time. Somehow it sticks, but I don't know if he's going to have the run off the corner. He did better than I expected, side by side with Cutlip down the backstretch. Now that he's got the position, can he take advantage of it, or is he going to just get pinned down there on the bottom by Jonathan Cutlip?
Blake Reynolds through to second. He's stalking into Tyler Fode. Gerald Campbell spun on the front straightaway. He's down towards pit road. Probably won't draw a caution flag. Cutlip and Stanley side by side. Contact for third between Stanley and Cutlip. Tate Lytle and Ethan Burrell looking on side by side.
And here comes the move for the lead from Blake Reynolds. He goes to the inside of Tyler Fode in 3 and 4. Can he make it stick? He's still there, but I think Fode's going to be able to power around as they cross the line for 5 to go.
Fode able to continue that defensive driving for the race lead. In third, Ethan Stanley clears by Jonathan Cutlip. He'll move to the top. Here comes Tate Lytle for fourth. Lytle working to the bottom. Reynolds trying to generate the run back to the lead up front, but they're still side by side for fourth between Tate Lytle and Jonathan Cutlip. Tyler Fode trying to maintain that middle lane all the way home.
Lytle clears up in front of Cutlip. Meanwhile, 4 laps to go for Tyler Fode, looking for that 22nd Belly Up Sports Cup Series win with Blake Reynolds in tow. This is going to be about as good as it gets over these final 4 laps.
Yeah, the best of the Elite Cup Series versus the best of the rookies here in Blake Reynolds. He's working to the bottom on Tyler Fode once again, but Fode able to take that defensive line up to the top of the racetrack, able to hold back that 66 car for one more corner. 3 laps to go at the line this time. It's a 2-car race between Fode and Reynolds. Stanley and Lytle are too far back to make a move.
Reynolds right in the tire tracks of Fode. A little bit lower on exit, but able to generate a run. Looks to the inside going into 3. Here's where he's tried to move every time so far, but just can't. Oh, up the hill, and he has to back out of it.
Yep. Reynolds probably backs out, trying to avoid wrecking Tyler Fode for it, going for this race win. Fode able to hold him off. 2 laps to go, down into turn 1. This has been Reynolds' best corner each and every time. He's able to generate more run from the wake of a car behind than I've seen anybody else be able to do. And that run is something he's been able to use to dive into turn 3 each time. It just hasn't been able to stick. Reynolds continuing to try and fight that bottom lane, but he does have to back out. Here comes Ethan Stanley for second.
And can Ethan Stanley capitalize? He gets to the inside of Blake Reynolds. He's not going to be able to clear before they get to the end of the front stretch. Can he make something happen in 1 and 2? He's been able to drive it into 1 deep. It works that time. He's going to be clear coming down the back stretch.
Here comes Tate Lytle for third. Reynolds gave it everything he had. He's going to fall short. Ethan Stanley working after his teammate Tyler Fode. Up to the top goes Ethan Stanley, but it's not going to be enough. Tyler Fode dominates at Kentucky. He will come home and win the 200th Elite Belly Up Sports Cup Series race, the Kentucky 200. Ethan Stanley for second, and Blake Reynolds will take over third. A line from Tate Lytle. Jonathan Cutlip finishes in 5th. Ethan Burrell 6th. Justin Vandermarl finishes in 7th. And a look back at the 200th Elite Cup Series race finish. It's Kyle Hanshaw. No, it's not. It's Tyler Fode grabbing that win. The winningest driver in Elite Cup Series history continues to stretch that mark. Continues to make history week in and week out over his teammate Ethan Stanley and newcomer Blake Reynolds. I'll tell you what, that was probably one of Tyler Fode's most hard-fought wins. You know, he dominated that race, but I don't think there was ever a point where he had more than a half-second lead.
No, that was definitely one of the more exciting races we've seen on the 1.5 miles here. And Tyler Fode, hard-fought win, and just looking at some of those numbers that have been amassed over 200 races here in Elite, and it's almost fitting. You look at the guys who have the most top 10s in series history. Fode, of course, winning. Chad Frankenfield coming home with the top 10. Ethan Burrell right there in the mix for most of the night. Just unfortunately for Matthew Weeks, got kind of caught up there late in the race, and he's not among these top finishers.
Right. And, Weeks, obviously, with that mistake and the loose condition, as we take a look at the finishing order for this 200th Elite Belly Up Sports Cup Series race, a little bit surprising, but what to me is maybe not surprising, honestly. I was kind of expecting it and kind of calling it that way all the way through, but to watch Ethan Stanley and Tate Lytle, who both got off sequence with the race leaders very early in the event, and charge through the field to pick up a second and a fourth in this race, is really rather remarkable. That we just know those two guys in particular are just never out of this thing unless the car is exploded, basically. Like, that's the only way you can keep these guys out of the top 5 in this series, it seems like. And even in a race where it seemed extremely difficult to pass, those two were just able to pass everybody. I don't see Blake Reynolds in the voice chat or anything, so let's grab second place finisher Ethan Stanley and talk to him. since we've got a chance, if I can get him in here.
I believe in you.
Ethan Stanley, it's David in the booth. You got me, buddy?
Yeah, what's up?
Yeah, we talked to you last week after you won the Daytona 500. This week, one spot short, but a much more adventurous race for you tonight. Take me through the kind of catch-up process, the crash damage, and then ultimately the charge through the field that led to your second place finish.
Yeah, it seems whenever I try an alternate strategy, I always end up getting a caution as soon as I go to pit road. So I had to start at the back on the I think it was the second restart, and then I think it was about 50 seconds of damage, so it wasn't too bad. Nothing permanent, so I was able to just kind of drive my way through the field. I was really trying to do like a long fuel save at the end there, and then we had that slew of cautions at the end. Like me, Tate, and a couple cars there. We're almost going to make it. And then, there at the end, just trying to carve my way through the field, and then the two tires at the end was a lot tighter than I thought it would be. And but I was able to make it work and work my way up to the front. If only I had like a couple more laps, I think I could have had the race.
You were definitely able to make some moves late in the race, but as you touched on, that long fuel save kind of caught you on the back foot a little bit when the caution did come out. How stressful was it making those passes and getting up to the podium finish while digging yourself out of that proverbial hole?
Yeah, it's always sketchy to go 3 wide around here, so you just got to be careful. And I don't know, just take it easy. We had a couple crashes there that helped too, and it was a fun battle at the end.
Well, Ethan, after winning last week, you were really just trophy hunting at this point and trying to build a points gap, and obviously second place finish is really going to help that. But, with regards to the rest of this regular season, as we approach a road course, you got your eye on that one as well, given that, you're generally regarded as one of the best on road courses here in this league.
Oh yeah, pretty excited for Zandvoort. It was really fun in the Xfinity car. Should be pretty good in the next gen. And hoping to go for a win there next week. Was really hoping I'd get the win tonight here, but another second place. Every time I've come here, finished second place. And other than that, just looking forward to the rest of the season.
And before we let you go, let's get those shout-outs and everyone you have to thank on another strong finish to start the season.
Oh yeah, of course, big shout out to Blue Egg Marketing, being the sponsor on the car. JD Designs for painting all these beautiful paints. Guys back at Lake Norman for always bringing the best. We figured out the setup pretty early on, and car felt great. And then big shout out to you guys up in the booth, always putting on a great product every week. And big shout out to Chad and Shay and everybody that makes the league run.
Awesome. Well, we appreciate it, Ethan. Congratulations on another good finish, and we'll look forward to talking to you next week. I feel like we will.
Yep. Thanks, guys.
That is Ethan Stanley, last week's winner and this week's runner-up. Let's grab race winner Tyler Fody and bring him in. And Tyler, we ended up not talking to you despite you leading on the last lap last week at Daytona, but this week you get it done. You fended off a former pro. You fended off your teammate. Take me through your night. It seemed like that was an awfully stressful, dominant win.
Yeah, dude, I was shaking, sweating, puking, just everything. It felt terrible. Those last 20 laps were pretty rough. I'm glad we got some yellows to break it up a little bit. I knew I could potentially hold them off if it was inside 10 laps with a good jump, but after that, man, they were tough, especially Blake. Props to him. I think he could have been a little more aggressive. He was definitely cutting me some slack in some spots, and it's probably just because he's a little new, but it was super fun racing with him. He was super respectful the whole time. Tight, hard racing. Kept me on my toes.
Now, of course, we touched on it a little bit with Ethan Stanley, and the same definitely applies to you. Next week, Zandvoort road course. you ran well there in the Grand National Series when it was there last year. How do you feel going into that challenge next week?
Yeah, that'll be the second time I've ever run it. I remember having to buy it for Xfinity, and it was a fun track. Went pretty well. I've heard from people that have tried it already that it's really brutal. So I don't know. I may have to run some laps prior to this because, yeah, it's a tough track. It's a fun track, but I think it'll be. I think I'll be lucky to just hang on to the back of Stanley for that one, which would be fine if we went 1-2 again.
And Tyler, you're locked into the playoffs. We have the win and you're in situation these days. So, take me through your mindset going into the rest of this regular season. Obviously, you're gonna trophy hunt, but what's your kind of mindset since it's both you and your teammate. You know who your biggest rivals are going to be. I think for this championship. What's the play as we roll through this regular season?
Just try not to lose the momentum. Obviously go out and try and win every race, but the bigger picture is just trying to keep the consistency going. With the top 5s, top 10s, and just try and carry that throughout the season is the main thing. That way you're a little more comfortable going into the playoffs and it's not new. So just gonna, try and keep that up. Hopefully be back up here talking with y'all a few more times this season. I think that would be the goal.
And before we let you go, and hopefully we'll get to hear from you more this season, like you said, but here's your chance to give those thanks and shout outs on this fine Wednesday night after your first win of the season.
Yeah, like I said earlier, shout out to Blake. New to the league, but definitely not new to this sim. So I think it'll be interesting going forward with him in the league now. Shout out to the whole team, like Norman. Stanley, obviously, for bringing home the 1-2. We got a 1-2 in Daytona. Backed it up again this week. Stanley kind of owed me one anyway for bailing on me at Daytona, so I think we're even now. But, all those guys, Gavel rallied back to get a top 10. Justin put it third in qualifying, and Crump was there too. Those two just ran into some trouble. But, overall the speed's there. So super happy with all of that. I do got to shout out the affiliate teammate in Cup, at least, Caleb Becumer, for making his debut tonight. I don't know how much y'all touched on that, but from what it looks like, he survived, got 23rd. So super cool to see him running in Cup now. Obviously been really good in the lower stuff, so look forward to watching him up here. And then also John Cutlip with JD Designs for painting all of our cars.
Gotcha. Well, congratulations on the win tonight, Tyler, and we will probably talk to you next week.
Sounds like a plan.
Race winner Tyler Fody. We went a little out of order, but we'll grab Blake Reynolds here and talk to him, even though we usually do third place first. But Blake, congratulations on the P3 run tonight. Take me through your first impressions after 2 races in this Elite Cup Series.
Yeah, it's good stuff. Really clean racing up front. Really good competition. That's kind of what I was looking for. Just something new. I've been running FTF on the weekends, but sometimes you want the weekends to yourself. So nice midweek league. And my friend Garrison Hogan told me about it, so I was like, yeah, you know what, I'll run. Had the excellent experience of trying to qualify as an open car to the 500. Luckily, I did that. And then I had a great 500. I think I got 5th or something. And then tonight, I have never raced Kentucky. Ever. This new one. I thought we were racing the old one, and I load in, I'm like, oh, it's the new one. I've never raced it. So I actually had to learn the track. It was kind of interesting, having to learn the track.
That is crazy to hear. But there you were at the end of it, racing Tyler Fody for the win. Talk us through that battle, and certainly you had the ability to kind of get alongside him, but just couldn't quite get the run off the corner to make that pass. What was kind of going through your head as you were involved in that battle for the win?
Well, it was going to be tough. As the race went on, the track got colder, and then the line got more rubbered in, and I knew if we kept having cautions, that
that was going to be the only line. There was no way you could, do a wide arc and shallow exit, do a late apex. So I just went for it. I'm like, surely we'll get a green, white checkers. I can cool my tires down. I think we went green with 5 laps to go. I cooked the fronts. I was cranking. I was just banking on a green, white checkered, and with 2 to go there, I cooked my fronts, and then Ethan and Tate showed up, and I couldn't do anything after that. We were just side drafting each other. So I tried everything. There was a couple of times there I hit the apron and cocked it up and almost got into Fodie's left rear. I'm glad I didn't do that. I'm new here. I didn't want to wreck anybody, really. I want to have a clean reputation on a clean slate. So I'm glad I kept it clean. Nice top 3. I think I might be the points leader. I have no idea where Ethan or Fodie or any of them finished in the 500.
Ethan won the 500, so he'll be the points leader. Yeah.
Okay. Well, I'm 2nd or 3rd or 4th, something like that. So good stuff. And shout out to Channel 199 Sim Racing, Track Racer, Drink Machine Works, all the partners on my beautiful vehicle, and hopefully my teammates will show up. Well, Paul was in the race tonight. Unfortunately, got in a wreck with Jeff Green, 2000 Busch Series champion. That's cool to race someone like that. And then Garrison's not here. I don't know where he is. I think he's running that Dale Jr. race.
Gotcha.
Who knows?
Well, we appreciate it, Blake. And you're definitely going to be a threat for this championship. So it's going to be exciting to get to talk to you this year. And we'll look forward to seeing you next week. Next week's another track you might not have raced on before because it's Zandvoort.
I'm very familiar.
Gotcha.
I run in a GT3 league, and we ran that, and I ran it in a Corvette. So hopefully a stock car similar to a Corvette.
Yeah, that's similar enough, right?
Yeah. Hopefully. Well, we'll see. I mean, maybe turn 4? I think these things, yeah.
Right?
Turn 4. I'm pretty sure these things will handle it well. Surely.
Hopefully.
Yeah.
It's gonna be an adventure next week, but we'll look forward to talking to you next week, Blake Reynolds. We appreciate your time and have a good night, man. Congratulations on another good run.
Yeah, thank you. These broadcasts have been cool to watch back, so appreciate it.
Awesome. Well, have a good night, and we'll see you next week.
Yep, see ya.
That's Blake Reynolds, and that's all of our podium finishers tonight, Zach. Another exciting Elite Cup Series race, the 200th race. Definitely lived up to it. I don't think that there was ever, like I said, I don't think there was ever just a lead of more than a second through the whole race. This was very, very competitive between the top 5 or 6 drivers and throughout the field. Difficult to pass, a bunch of excitement. And we've got a exciting track that I just don't know very well. I'm sure you might be able to help me out next week, but Zandvoort next week, it's going to be fun.
It's funny with the Zandvoort race. I was actually called in as a relief pitcher for that Grand National broadcast 1 year ago. So a little familiarity with the track and not so much behind the wheel, but watching racing there. And it'll be very interesting to see the differences between the next gen car and, of course, that Xfinity car, how it tackles the revamped and updated Zandvoort circuit, of course, that got all those updates for Formula One a few years ago, and those are part of the iRacing scan. So we'll see who is able to handle the twists and turns and banking and all of that Zandvoort has to offer.
Don't miss it, folks. It'll be an awesome one. I would pencil in Ethan Stanley as the favorite next week, but we've got a bunch of new faces, and you never know when it comes to the Elite Cup Series. So for all of us at the Elite Racing Network, myself, David Westergreen, Dave Huckleberry, the producer, Zach Evans, my co-announcer, that was the 200th all-time Elite Belly Up Sports Cup Series race. We will catch you next week in Zandvoort. Have a good night.